It's funny. You can stream a 4K movie directly from a satellite in space right to a phone in your pocket, and it happens in milliseconds.
Oh, yeah, like practically zero lag.
Exactly. Or you can video chat with someone on another continent, and there's not even a hint of a delay. And this is what drives me crazy. Why is it that when you transfer money from one bank account to another, it just, sits there?
Right, with that little pending icon.
Yes, that little pending icon for like 3 agonizing days. It makes no sense. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking the custom-tailored source material you shared with us, and we are unpacking the hidden plumbing of the global economy.
It's a fascinating topic, honestly.
It really is. Our mission today is to figure out exactly how banks actually move these staggering amounts of money instantaneously, and why the systems that run our personal finances are completely different from those invisible networks keeping the modern world afloat.
Yeah, I mean, it really is one of those massive structural paradoxes because, as you said, we clearly have the technology for instant global communication.
Right.
So that delay in everyday banking, it's not a technological limit at all. It's actually a deliberate architectural choice.
Huh. A choice?
Yeah, and to really understand why that choice exists, the research you shared with us, it points us toward the absolute bedrock of high finance. It's this framework called real-time gross settlement.
Okay, let's unpack this because the source material gives us a very rigid, specific definition right out of the gate. It defines real-time gross settlement, or RTGS, as a financial system that ensures immediate and irrevocable fund transfers between banks for high-value transactions.
Mouthful, I know.
Right, super dense sentence.
Yeah.
But every single word there is doing heavy lifting. I mean, you've got immediate, you've got irrevocable between banks and high value.
Yeah, and it's basically the perfect starting point because before we can really grasp how this impacts global markets, we have to decode the acronym itself. For sure. The financial sector loves its jargon, and it is so easy to get lost in the weeds. But the fundamental mechanism here, it hinges entirely on that phrase, gross settlement.
Gross settlement, right.
If you understand how that differs from what the rest of us use every day, the sheer genius of the entire system just kind of clicks into place.
So when I was reading the text's breakdown of gross versus net settlement, I immediately pictured like a packed bar on a Friday night.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. So let's say you're operating on a net settlement system. That is essentially keeping a bar tab open all night long.
Right.
You order a drink at 8 p.m., the bartender jots it down. Your friend orders one at 9 p.m., it gets added to the list. You do this for hours. And the critical thing here is that no actual money has changed hands yet.
Exactly. You're basically just building a list of IOUs.
Yes, exactly. A list of IOUs. And then finally at, say, 2 a.m., the bartender tallies everything up. Maybe he cancels out any drinks he might owe you for a previous favor or whatever.
Yeah.
He looks at that final net number, and you swipe your card once to settle the entire evening's balance.
That is the exact mechanism of a netting system. It completely relies on aggregating data over a set period.
It's all batched together.
Right. Transactions are batched, they accumulate in this sort of holding pattern, and then they're processed and settled simultaneously, usually, at the close of the business day.
But gross settlement, the DS, in RTGS, that's the exact opposite.
It's literally the opposite, yeah.
Gross settlement is walking up to that exact same bartender, ordering a drink, and paying for it in full the exact moment he hands it to you.
Yes.
Then, you order another drink 10 minutes later and you run your card again. You never group them. Every single transaction is settled individually in real time the exact second it occurs.
Precisely. There is zero bundling. There's no waiting around for some end-of-day tally to see who owes what to whom. When the text uses the term real time, it literally means the settlement executes the exact moment the instruction is received.
Wow.
Yeah. The receiving bank gets the funds immediately after they leave the sending bank.
But hold on, if we're talking about billions of dollars moving instantly, there obviously isn't like a fleet of armored trucks zooming across the financial district every time a gross settlement clears.
No, definitely not.
So if there's no physical cash moving, what stops central banks from just, accidentally adding a zero? If they're just updating a spreadsheet, how do we actually trust $1 billion instant adjustment?
That's a really vital question, and the text is very explicit about this. An RTGS system requires zero physical exchange of funds.
Right.
The entire process is managed electronically by a central bank. But, it's not just some casual Excel spreadsheet. It's a highly secure, cryptographically airtight master ledger.
So the central bank is basically acting as the ultimate referee here.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, central banks are really the only entities with the structural authority to hold the master accounts for all the commercial banks in a country.
Okay, that makes sense.
Let's use the exact example from the research, actually. Suppose Bank A needs to send $1 million to Bank B.
Okay, $1 million.
Through the RTGS system, the central bank accesses its master ledger, reduces sender Bank A's balance by $1 million, and in that exact same millisecond, increases recipient Bank B's balance by $1 million.
And that's it.
That's it. Done. Settled. Irrevocable.
$1 million moved in the literal blink of an eye.
Mm.
No IOUs, no waiting for 2 a.m. to close the tab.
Exactly. The central bank acts as the trusted third party. They guarantee that, yes, Bank A had the liquidity, and yes, that liquidity is now officially sitting with Bank B.
Which really highlights that at this level of finance, money isn't paper or gold. It's pure data.
Just ones and zeros.
Yeah. And honestly, that realization made the history of these systems, which is outlined in the text, completely wild to me.
Oh, the historical evolution is fascinating because it proves that the need for instant liquidity, it isn't just a byproduct of the modern internet. It's a fundamental requirement of a sprawling economy.
Right. Because when you hear, real-time digital network, you naturally assume it's a product of the dot-com boom, like the 90s or the 2000s.
Sure, that makes sense.
But the research points out that the very first system resembling real-time gross settlement was launched way back in 1970. The U.S. Fedwire system.
Yes. The U.S. Federal Reserve realized over 50 years ago that the sheer volume of interbank transfers was getting too massive to rely on physical checks and delayed netting.
But, and this is the detail that absolutely stopped me in my tracks, it was what Fedwire evolved from.
Oh, the telegraph stuff.
Yes. The source specifically notes it was born from a telegraph-based system. We're talking about Samuel Morse here. Tap, tap, tap telegrams.
It sounds crazy, right?
I am having a genuinely hard time wrapping my head around the fact that the invisible plumbing moving millions of dollars today is rooted in 19th century telegraph technology. I mean, how is a telegraph secure or fast enough for gross settlement?
It really feels like an anachronism, doesn't it? But mechanically, it actually makes perfect sense. The technology transmitting the data has evolved, obviously, from copper telegraph wires to fiber optics. Right. But the core operational necessity hasn't changed a bit. Banks have always needed what the text calls immediate and complete clearing for large value interbank funds.
Oh, I see.
The telegraph was simply the very first low latency data network. It was the first time in human history that information, and by extension, money, could move faster than a physical courier on a train.
Oh, wow. So the appetite for instant settlement was literally always there. They were just waiting for the technology to catch up to the demand.
Exactly. And as the global economy scaled up, other major financial hubs recognized they couldn't operate without this capability either. The source highlights the UK's system, CHAPS.
Right, which stands for the Clearinghouse Automated Payment System.
Yeah, and that one is operated by the Bank of England.
And then there's the Eurozone system, which has a truly spectacular acronym, Target 2.
Oh, yeah, Target 2, which stands for the Trans-European Automated Real-Time Gross Settlement Express Transfer System.
I mean, that is a massive mouthful.
It is, yeah. But think about the sheer complexity that Target 2 has to manage. You have multiple different sovereign nations all using a single currency.
That's true.
They require a unified ledger so that a bank in Germany can instantly and irrevocably settle a €1 billion transfer with a bank in Italy. Without an RTGS system, the cross-border friction would literally grind European markets to a halt.
It would just be gridlock.
Total gridlock. The text makes it clear that having an RTGS-type system is now a baseline requirement for participating in modern global finance. Doesn't matter if you're a developed nation or an emerging market.
Okay, so this brings us right back to our original frustration at the start of the deep dive. We have this lightning-fast, highly secure global network of central banks zipping millions of dollars back and forth in milliseconds.
Right.
The technology is clearly there. So why on earth doesn't every single transaction use it? Why am I still waiting 3 days for a regular payment to clear?
And that's the logical question. If we have the tech, why artificially delay everyday banking? Well, the answer comes down to system bandwidth, liquidity, and cost. We have to contrast RTGS with the net settlement systems that ordinary people use.
The text draws a pretty direct comparison here. It brings up the United Kingdom's BACS system, formerly known as Bankers Automated Clearing Services.
Right. BACS is basically the textbook definition of a net settlement system.
And it describes the mechanism perfectly.
Yeah.
BACS basically acts as a massive holding pen.
Yeah, exactly.
Transactions between institutions are just accumulated all day long. If I pay my electric bill or if my employer issues payroll, it just piles up the system.
Just sits there waiting.
Right. It isn't until the close of business that the central bank steps in, looks at that massive aggregate pile, and adjusts the institutional accounts by the net amounts of everything that was exchanged.
And if you're in the U.S., the equivalent mentioned in the text is the Automated Clearinghouse, or ACH.
Oh, ACH, right.
Yeah, direct deposits, automatic bill pay, even just transferring money between your checking and savings at different banks, that's all ACH. And as the research notes, ACH transfers often take a few days to fully clear.
So if we go back to analogies to sort of understand why banks run two entirely different tracks for moving money.
Let's do it.
Debt settlement systems like BACS and ACH operate a lot like a crowded public city bus.
Walk us through that. How so?
Well, a city bus is designed to batch passengers together, right? You wait at the terminal until the bus is full, you make a lot of stops, and it takes a while to reach the final destination.
Right, it's not a direct route.
Exactly. But because you're bundling, 50 people into one vehicle, the cost per person is incredibly low. It's highly efficient for moving a massive volume of low-value cargo.
That's a really good way to put it. And following that logic, RTGS is...
RTGS is chartering a private jet.
A private jet.
Yeah, it is highly individualized. You are the only transaction on the flight.
Yeah.
You go straight from point A to point B at top speed with absolutely no stops. But because you are commanding dedicated resources for a single instantaneous flight, it is exponentially more resource intensive.
That's a great way to frame the resource intensity, because the source points out that since RTGS is unbundled and instantaneous, it inherently incurs higher fees.
Of course it does.
Now, while those fees vary wildly depending on the country, the specific institution, and the size of the transfer, and sometimes they're even waived for certain institutional clients, the sheer cost of operating an instant individual settlement means it's structurally more expensive than netting.
Right. You aren't going to charter a private jet to go to the grocery store.
Definitely not.
And a bank isn't going to use RTGS to process your $5 coffee purchase. The processing fee would absolutely dwarf the transaction itself.
Exactly.
It's strictly reserved for high-value interbank transfers, where speed and absolute certainty are completely non-negotiable. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because as I read further into the source material, I realized that speed isn't just a luxury for impatient banks. Speed isn't just about getting the money faster. Speed is actually a vital defense mechanism.
What's fascinating here is how the text shifts our focus from the mechanics of speed to the security of speed. It introduces a critical concept to explain this: settlement risk, which is also known in the industry as delivery risk.
Let's break that down for everyone. Why is a delay inherently risky for a bank?
Well, think back to the public bus analogy, or the bar tab. In a net settlement system like BACS, you have transactions accumulating for 8, 10, maybe even 24 hours.
Right.
During that entire window, there is this lingering uncertainty. The promise to pay has been made, but the funds haven't officially moved yet. So what happens if, at 2 p.m., one of the major banks involved in that netting process suddenly goes bankrupt?
Oh, wow.
What if there's a massive systemic failure?
The tab is suddenly worthless.
Exactly. The transactions were promised, the data was logged, but the liquidity just isn't there to actually settle it at the end of the day. That gap in time creates a systemic vulnerability where the delivery of funds could catastrophically fail. That is settlement risk.
But because RTGS handles every transfer individually and immediately, that dangerous waiting period just ceases to exist.
Right. The source makes a real point of highlighting that RTGS completely eliminates the risk of transaction delays. By settling the gross amount in real time, delivery risk is mathematically erased.
It's just gone.
Yeah, the money's either there and transferred instantly, or it isn't. There's no 8-hour window for a bank to collapse while holding a promise.
And that concept of the vulnerability window, that leads us right into the cybersecurity aspect of the research, which feels incredibly relevant right now. The text notes that while financial institutions maintain top-tier security for sensitive data, online threats are constantly evolving.
They are, constantly. And the source points to 2 specific threats targeting financial data. The first is social engineering, commonly known as phishing, where attackers manipulate people into handing over credentials or access codes.
Right, the classic email scam.
Yeah. And the second is outright data theft, where hackers breach a system, extract sensitive financial data, and monetize it on the black market.
Wait, if hackers are already inside a system via phishing or a data breach, how does a settlement system stop them? Are you saying that by simply being faster, the target is moving too quickly for the hacker to hit?
That's the underlying physics of it, yes. The source dedicates a whole section to explaining that RTGS-type systems protect financial data by exposing it for a much, much briefer time window. Real-time gross settlement mitigates threats by fundamentally shrinking the amount of time critical information is vulnerable.
But how does that actually play out in a cyber attack, though?
Well, picture a net settlement system again. You have this massive database acting as a holding area for millions of pending transactions just sitting there waiting for the end-of-day clearing.
Yeah, it's sitting ducks.
Exactly. That pending batch is a static target. A hacker who breaches the network has hours to probe that database, extract account numbers, or even alter the routing data before the central bank ever processes the batch.
But with RTGS?
Well, with RTGS, there's no holding area. There is no static database of pending transfers waiting for 5 p.m. The initiation and execution of the transaction are practically simultaneous.
Right.
The data exists in transit for mere milliseconds. The window where that critical information is sitting still, vulnerable to interception or alteration, shrinks to almost zero.
It's incredible.
By the time an attacker's automated script even registers that a high-value transaction is occurring, it's already complete, settled, and irrevocable on the central bank's ledger.
So what does this all mean? If we are pulling all these complex threads together for you, the listener, it basically comes down to this. Real-time gross settlement is the invisible, instantaneous, and irrevocable backbone of high finance. It's the architecture that allows the global economy to function securely without getting bogged down by a massive, risky web of end-of-day IOUs. By refusing to bundle payments, it eliminates delays, wipes out settlement risk, and drastically shrinks the window for data theft. It is the ultra-secure private jet of the financial world, operating high above the crowded, delayed buses of everyday consumer banking.
That covers the core mechanics perfectly. I mean, it's a system designed to ensure seamless financial operations on a scale and speed that most of us never even realize is happening.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on, something that builds on the rules of the system we just explored, but sort of pushes it into slightly terrifying, uncharted territory.
Okay, color me intrigued. Where are we going with this?
Well, the text heavily emphasizes that RTGS protects data by shrinking that vulnerability window down to milliseconds, right? The speed is the shield.
Right. It basically moves too fast for traditional cyber attacks to intercept.
But the text also states, unequivocally, that RTGS transactions are irrevocable. Once the central bank updates that ledger, it is permanent. There are no takebacks.
Yeah, that's a core feature.
Now, factor in the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence and quantum computing. We are quickly entering a technological era where hackers won't need hours to breach a holding database. Advanced AI will be able to identify, target, and execute complex cyber attacks in literal milliseconds.
Oh, which is the exact operational speed of RTGS.
Exactly. So here is the provocative scenario to mull over. Could the very thing that makes RTGS secure today, its instantaneous, irrevocable nature, one day become its greatest liability?
Wow.
Right? If a hyper-advanced AI-driven exploit manages to slip through that tiny millisecond window and manipulate a massive transfer as it happens, the money is gone, irrevocably.
Because there's no end-of-day netting to catch the mistake.
Yes. Because there is no delayed holding pen, there is absolutely no safety net to catch the error before it clears. The speed that currently protects the global economy from hackers might be the exact mechanism that prevents us from stopping a quantum speed attack in the future.
That is a staggering implication. If the vulnerability window is measured in milliseconds, the defense mechanism has to be predictive, not just reactive. It really forces you to question how long an architecture born from the telegraph era can actually outrun artificial intelligence.
It really does. It shows that even the most rock-solid systems running our world have to constantly evolve to survive. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep questioning the hidden plumbing of the world around you. Look for those invisible gears. And the next time you see pending on your banking app, at least you'll know exactly why you aren't flying on the private jet. We'll catch you on the next one.